So hi everyone, my name is Diana Vasquez. I'm the BERDO Review Board Manager. The Review Board does not currently have an appointed chair, so typically I lead us in a vote for acting chair at the top of the meeting. Does anyone on the Review Board want to make a nomination for acting chair for today's meeting?
I would like to nominate Hassan Faruqi as acting chair of the board, please.
Thank you, Board Member Ellis. Is there a second?
Second.
A second. Sorry.
Awesome. Thank you. No, that's great. Thank you. So I will now lead us in a vote for acting chair. How do you vote, Board Member Boyd?
In favor.
Board Member Ellis?
In favor.
Board Member Faruqi?
In favor.
Board Member Lattimore?
In favor.
And Board Member Nelson?
In favor.
Great. And I hand the meeting over to acting chair Faruqi and share my screen.
Great. Thank you so much, Diana. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm calling this public meeting to order at 4:35 p.m. In accordance with the Building Emissions Reduction and Disclosure Ordinance regulations adopted pursuant to the Building Emissions Reduction and Disclosure Ordinance, Boston City Code Ordinances Section 7-2.2, the BERDO Review Board will hold a virtual public meeting at 4:30 p.m. October 28th to review the following topics in regards to the reduction of greenhouse gases from building energy production and consumption in Boston. In accordance with the Commonwealth of Massachusetts executive order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, we are conducting this public meeting online. And to ensure public access to the deliberations of the BERDO Review Board, the public may access this call through telephone and video conferencing. Members of the public will have an opportunity to ask questions and provide comment. And to do so, please raise your hand or type in the chat in the application via the Zoom platform. And if you're calling in and can't use the platform, you can raise your hand by pressing *9. Or you can send your questions to staff via the email berdoreviewboard@boston.gov. For the record, I'm Hassan Faruqi, acting chair of the board, and I'll now conduct a roll call of board members. So if board members could please say your name in the order that they appear on the slide, that'd be great.
Rashida Boyd.
Stephen Ellis.
Hassan Faruqi.
Gail Lattimore.
Jack Nelson.
Thank you. And now welcome the staff of the Environment Department to introduce themselves.
Hannah Payne, Director of Carbon Neutrality in the Environment Department.
Diana Vasquez, BERDO Review Board Manager.
Claudia Diaz Martinez, Policy and Equity Advisor for the Environment Department.
And actually, update, Ziggy will not be joining us today.
Great. Awesome. Thanks. So here's the agenda for today's meeting. The City of Boston's hearing for their building portfolio has been postponed to a later date, so the city staff can update their initial application. So we'll start by voting on flexibility measure applications, then approve the meeting minutes from the last meeting and hear administrative updates, and then finally we can adjourn. So first on the agenda, we'll hear some information regarding flexibility measures and discuss the vote on applications, unless there's anything else that we need to discuss on the hearing postponement.
Yes, I was just going to provide a quick update.
Thank you.
So just a very quick update. So folks may remember at our last meeting, the City of Boston submitted their application for a building portfolio. It was submitted as a Pathway 2 application, which just requires some environmental justice maps in addition to the usual building portfolio application questions. So following that hearing, the review board had some really good questions for our application, and the City of Boston staff took a closer look at the buildings and just found that there could be some more accurate building uses for some of the buildings. So for example, one of the buildings on Long Island was listed as residential, but currently no one actually lives there, and it was more of a long-term facility for medical purposes. So updating that building use to be lodging as opposed to residential and things like that. So the City of Boston will be resubmitting with a more accurate portfolio application. And once that application is submitted, we'll review for completeness, and then we'll go straight to hearing because we know that the review board is interested in that. So we don't think we need to have a new vote on that. But yeah, that was just a quick update on that.
Great. Thank you so much, Diana. Do any of the board members have any questions on this topic? All right. Seeing none, then we can move on to the flexibility measure applications and discuss the vote on the applications. So I'll hand it back to Diana.
Yes, thank you, Acting Chair Faruqi. So we have some applications for the review board today. First one is a building portfolio application from Emerson College. As board members may remember, Emerson College submitted previously, and the board had a couple questions about some of the building uses. Emerson College did update their application. So just to review, they submitted via Pathway 1 for 10 buildings in the neighborhood of downtown Boston. The applicant did meet all the eligibility criteria and the application was deemed complete. So these are the 10 buildings and their addresses and corresponding BERDO IDs. So previously, all 10 buildings were submitted under College University. After a quick update and meeting with Emerson, they have submitted and updated their building uses to now include College University assembly for some theaters and food sales and services. Just a quick note on the food sales and services, they're considered non-primary. That just means that the gross floor area associated with food sales and services was less than 10% of the total gross floor area for that building. So it is technically in the building, but it's not considered a primary use. And this is their updated calculated blended emission standard. And I believe I saw Jennifer from Emerson College in the meeting as well, in case board members have any questions.
Great. Thank you so much, Diana. Before I turn it over to the board members, I'd love for anyone, any representative of the application to introduce themselves, their name, and their role with the organization for the record.
Sure. I'm Jen Lammy. I'm Associate Director of Sustainability at Emerson College.
Excellent. Thank you, Jen. Welcome. All right, I will turn it over to board members for questions, and we'll start with Board Member Boyd.
Thank you, Hassan. No, I don't have any questions right now. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Board Member Ellis.
Thank you, thank you, Chair Member Faruqi. Thank you, Jen. Oh my goodness, I am in conference mode. Please forgive me. So I've been saying so many names this last few hours. So Jen, thank you for joining us. I was the one posing most of the questions regarding Emerson College last week, and so I appreciate the updates. I was able to review them, especially with the inclusion of the assembly. As a higher ed member myself, I was just making sure that we were able to account for all of these properties appropriately, and so I honestly don't have any questions. I just want to thank you for your patience and being able to update the information as according to what is the building type for Emerson College. So thank you very much for your help.
Of course. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Board Member Ellis. I also want to recognize that Councilor Coletta Zapata has joined us, and good to have you here. All right, we will proceed with questioning. I'll actually hold my questions till the end, so we'll turn it over to Board Member Lattimore.
Thank you. No questions.
All right, thank you. Board Member Nelson?
No questions, thank you.
Great, thank you. And I have no further questions. Councilor Coletta Zapata, do you have any questions on this application?
I do not, and I apologize for being late, everybody. I will waive my time for questions. Thank you.
Sounds good. No worries. Thanks. All right. Is there any motion to request a hearing on this application?
Apologies, Chair. No hearings for Pathway 1, so we're okay with that.
Oh, that's right. Oh, yes. Thank
Yep.
you. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, great. In that case, is there a motion to approve this application?
So moved.
Second.
Great. On the motion to approve Emerson College's application with standard conditions, how do you vote? In favor, opposed, or abstain? We'll start with Board Member Boyd.
In favor.
Councilor Coletta Zapata.
In favor.
Board Member Ellis.
In favor.
I am in favor. Board Member Lattimore.
In favor.
And Board Member Nelson.
In favor.
Great. The ayes have it. The motion passes. So Emerson College's building portfolio has been approved. And per the regulations, the Environment Department will send a copy of the written decision letter within 7 days. All right, thanks. And thank you, Jen, for joining us. Our next item is a building portfolio application for Boston Center for the Arts. And I'll turn it back to Diana to present this.
Awesome. Thank you, Chair. So our second application is a building portfolio application from Boston Center for the Arts. I'll move on. So it's submitted through Pathway 1, similarly like Emerson College, 3 buildings in the neighborhood of the South End, and the application met all of the eligibility criteria and it was deemed complete. So the Boston Center for the Arts has the following building use types: assembly, food sales and services, and office. It's for 3 buildings, and the addresses can be found here on the slide. And their calculated blended emission standard can be found here. As you can see, there's not a big difference from the default to the portfolio emission standards, but we did double check it and it is correct. So the portfolio is just the same as the default, which would be for assembly. But yeah, that is the quick summary of this application.
Great. Thank you, Diana. Is there anyone from Boston Center for the Arts here? And if so, could you please introduce your name and your role at the organization?
Hi, I'm Eden Floyd. I work at Power Options, but I'm here on behalf of Boston Center for the Arts.
Excellent. Welcome, Eden. Thanks for joining us. All right, we'll turn now to the board for Q&A on this application, and we will go in the reverse order this time. So I'll start with you, Board Member Nelson.
No questions.
Thank you. Board Member Lattimore.
No questions.
Thank you. I have no questions. Board Member Ellis.
Yes, thank you, Chair, and thank you, Eden, for joining us. Given that the emission standards are exactly equal with the submission of this proposed building portfolio, I'm just curious, can you talk about some of the benefits that Boston College for the Arts is hoping to achieve by having this building portfolio?
Yeah, I think it'll just give the BCA increased flexibility. You know, if as like any kind of energy efficiency measure for applied to one building will apply to an entire portfolio. So it just helps with flexibility.
Sounds good. All right. Well, thank you for that response. I was just curious, anytime you see exact numbers lining up with each other, it's always like, is this really worth what we need? But I appreciate your response. Nevertheless, I have no further questions. Thank you, Chair.
Great. Thank you, Board Member Ellis. Councilor Coletta Zapata, do you have any questions?
I do not. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you. Board Member Boyd.
No questions. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. I do have one additional question I realized I didn't get a chance to ask for Eden. Are there any other barriers that you see or challenges associated with full compliance with BERDO?
At this time, I am unaware of any. I can see the food and service areas, they are leased, so I can see that could potentially be a challenge in the future, but as of now, I'm not aware of any.
Got it. Thank you. Could you talk more about that issue? You're saying they're leased?
Yeah,
who-
just it's a leased space, or that square footage is leased. So the food service, the restaurants there, it's a little less control, if that makes sense.
Got it. Okay. Yeah, that's helpful. Thank you. Great. Any other questions from any board members? Yes, Board Member Lattimore.
Just to further clarify that question that you asked, Interim Chair Faruqi of Eden. So is this the food service area? Would that include the cafeteria then, or that's leased or not, or is that the school that maintains or do you have a cafeteria?
I do not believe this place has a cafeteria.
Okay, so this is, sorry, I'm mixing it up with the college. So this is strictly the bar. Okay, yeah, never mind. Got it. Thank you. So it's leasing some restaurant space within the center. Okay, thank you.
Board Member Ellis.
Yes, thank you. Just to seek secondary clarification on the food space in terms of the lease. I guess I'm curious, how have you been working with those that are the leasees, and are they aware of BERDO, and are there any potential challenges in being able to meet those emission thresholds that have been set?
At this time, I am unaware. I know for the BCA, their emission standard is currently under what's predicted for 2025. So there is room for them to have these discussions in the future.
Okay, so there are active engaged in discussion between the leaseor and the leasee, correct?
I am unsure at this moment.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. Any further questions from any of the board members? Yes, Board Member Lattimore.
Question really for the city. I think, as I understand it, every year for Pathway 1, it has all BERDO landlords have to do the reporting in any case, right? So we're looking at the targets that are being met or not met every year. Is that correct? I guess it's more for the city in any case.
I can try to answer. So is the question, if the landlord needs to check every report every year? Yes.
Well, the
correct.
emission standards, yes.
Correct. There are some situations like long-term leases. So for there are some cases where they're 99-year leases, or the leasee, the person who is not technically the owner in that situation, would be responsible for BERDO emissions, because it's, for all intents and purposes, they run the maintenance for the building.
Right.
So just to further clarify this, if there is a long-term lease, the owner may designate the tenant as the owner, but that needs to be submitted in writing and agreed upon by both parties. So that, like Diana was saying, may be the case in a long-term or a ground lease situation or a long-term lease. But ultimately, the responsibility of BERDO compliance is falls to the building owner. And there are, working with their lessee is important to achieve those goals, but the responsibility is on the owner. And
right. But emission standards are looked at every year in terms of the reporting, correct?
Correct. Starting.
Okay.
Yep. So
Yeah.
2025 for the 35,000
Right.
square feet and over.
Mhm.
For smaller buildings, they will have until 2030 to comply. So we won't look at emission standards for the smaller buildings until 2030.
Thank you. And by what mechanism does the building owner designate the tenant? Is there I don't recall any process that, I'm sure there is one that the city has set for that, or is there?
There is a process. We have information on that on our website.
Okay, got it. And just to eat it again, so at this point, how much of the space is the lease space, percentage wise?
I believe there are 2 leases, and if you just give me one moment, I apologize. Percentage wise for one of the buildings is roughly 20%. It's the food service percentage.
Okay, so you said for one of them is 20 and the other, or is that combined?
That is for one building. I apologize, I was wrong. That's the only building with leases.
Okay, 20%. Okay, thank you.
Great. Any further questions from the board? Okay, sounds good. Is there a motion to approve the Boston Center for the Arts building portfolio with standard conditions?
Motion to approve.
there any seconds?
I second.
Great. On the motion to approve Boston Center for the Arts application with standard conditions, how do you vote, Board Member Boyd?
In favor.
Councilor Coletta Zapata?
In favor.
Board Member Ellis?
In favor.
I am in favor. Board Member Lattimore?
In favor.
And Board
Oh,
Member
sorry.
Christian?
In favor.
Excellent. All right. The ayes have it. The motion passes and Boston Center for the Arts' building portfolio has been approved. For the regulations, the Environment Department will send a copy of the written decision letter within 7 days. Eden, thank you for joining us. All right. We'll now move on to the individual compliance schedule applications. And just kick off that discussion, I'll turn it back to Diana.
Thank you, Acting Chair. So now we're switching gears to individual compliance schedules. This is very exciting because these are the first applications that have been brought to the board, which is very exciting. So I'll move on. So just right before we get into the applications themselves, just want to do a quick review of what an individual compliance schedule is. So an individual compliance schedule is another flexibility measure that's allowed in BERDO. So far, we've only had meetings for building portfolios, but another option is the individual compliance schedule. And so building or approved building portfolios can use historic emissions data and apply to use a timeline that's based on their own benchmarked data with the baseline year that they select, with the caveat that the baseline year has to be between 2005 and 2021. So the ordinance spells out the main requirement that and that includes that it's based on absolute emissions or total emissions. So our standards are based on a per square foot basis. ICS is based on total emissions, so absolute emissions. And the reduction from baseline year to 2030 must be 50% and 100% by 2050, and it must be done on a linear or better basis. As we'll explain, that could mean 2 linear bases, essentially. Other eligibility criteria include all buildings in the ICS must be currently in compliance with BERDO because we only have reporting requirements. This just means being in compliance with reporting. Building uses, energy uses, gross floor area, and emission factors must be third-party verified during the last verification year. And the total GFA cannot have been reduced by more than 10% from baseline year to now. And the building's primary use must be the same from baseline year to now. And just to be very clear, this applies to each building if it's a building portfolio that's applying for an ICS. So options for the board may approve with standard conditions, or the board can continue discussing if they feel, they have any questions before they can feel comfortable voting for a motion. And then there's also the option for special conditions. So if an applicant does not meet one of the listed eligibility criteria on this slide, the review board may include special conditions as well. So I know it was a lot of information very quickly, but that's a quick summary. Oh, I see Board Member Ellis. Do you have a question?
Just seeking clarification, Diana. Can you provide us with an example? I know we were talking a little bit about this before the call, but can you provide us an example of what would be considered a special condition that the board may want to, set with respect to an individual compliance schedule?
Yes, that's a good question. So because special conditions must be related to any of the eligibility criteria that are not met, someone could, for example, apply for an ICS knowing that they have not completed their reporting. So they can still apply if they don't meet that eligibility criteria, and the review board has the option, for example, to say, we vote to approve with a special condition that you submit, missing information from the past years or something along those lines. So those are the kinds of things that can be sort of like special conditions that can be added. I don't know if Hannah or Claudia, if you have another example you'd like to add.
No, I think that was a good example. And again, those are only added if a application does not meet the eligibility criteria.
Great, thank you. And we can continue hearing from board members if they have any other questions from the city. I'll start with Board Member Lattimore. Board Member Lattimore, you're on mute.
Thank you. Just to make sure that I'm clear on this, because I always think of individual compliance plans schedule as applying only to build a couple of buildings. But as I'm thinking and looking at the definition again, you can actually have an entire portfolio on a different or alternative timeline to reduce. Okay. That's just something I wanted to make sure I understood clearly, because I thought it was just one building. So theoretically, a building owner can have an individual compliance schedule for, if they own 20 buildings that are BERDO eligible, they can apply for an ICS for maybe 2 of them, and then a building portfolio for the rest of the 18. Is that a correct possibility?
Yes, so to have an ICS for a building portfolio, yes, the building portfolio would need to be approved, and then the ICS would apply to all of the buildings in the building portfolio. So for example, if a building owner had 20 buildings and they only put 18 of those in a portfolio for, whatever reason that made sense for them, that building portfolio could have an ICS, but all 18 buildings would be subject to the individual compliance schedule.
Okay, I guess when I was looking at the, and I know we're gonna get to this soon, so I don't want to jump the gun, but when I was looking at, I believe it was TCV that submitted an ICS for just one building.
Correct.
I assume they have other buildings in Boston that are BERDO eligible, and so I'm trying to understand like why that one building for an ICS, and then if they have 19 other buildings, they'll just do, and they wanted to do a regular building portfolio, they could have both an ICS for that one building as well as a building portfolio for the other 19. I'm just trying to make sure I understand.
Correct. Yes. So, correct. They have one building that they're applying for an ICS, and then they have applied for a portfolio for their other buildings that are subject to BERDO.
I see. So you can have both individual buildings that have an individual compliance schedule and then a building portfolio that you can also ask for as a portfolio, a separate timeline. Correct?
Yes, correct. So yes, you can have one building that's in an ICS, and then if you would like your other buildings in a portfolio, you may also do that. So there is no limit in terms of the number of flexibility measures you could have.
Okay, thank you. I think I understand.
And if I may just add one, like, the reason for an individual compliance schedule is really if a building has kind of abnormal energy usage, but has already made a lot of investments in reducing their emissions and energy usage, then they can take advantage of that. So it really is on a case-by-case basis of whether it is a right approach for compliance.
Thank you.
I also had a clarifying question. Does the historic emissions data that the applicant is presenting also need to be third-party verified?
Yes, the historic emissions data needs to be verified. And if you're a building portfolio, with buildings with different baseline years, which we can flesh out as well, your emissions reduction timeline also has to be third-party verified.
Got it. Okay, great. Thank you. Any other clarifying questions on the individual compliance schedules from board members? Okay. All right, with that, I think we can move into our consideration of an application for an individual compliance schedule from Roxbury Highlands. So I'll turn it back to you, Diana.
Great, thank you, Acting Chair. So yes, our first individual compliance schedule application is from Roxbury Highlands. So Roxbury Highlands is an affordable housing developer, and they have one building. They're applying for one building in the neighborhood of Roxbury. It's a multifamily building, and the baseline year that they selected is 2021. The applicant meets all eligibility criteria, and the application was deemed complete by Environment Department staff. So just a quick summary of their application. As I mentioned, the building use type is multifamily housing. It's for one building. The address of the building is 15 Highland Ave. And this is a table that has the default reduction schedule for the multifamily. So it's the standard for multifamily times their gross floor area, and the proposed alternative reduction schedule for the ICS on the bottom row. And just because this chart is, is numbers, we also have a table or a bar chart that we think might be a little bit of an easier visualization. But in this case, the blue is the proposed ICS timeline, and the orange is the default emissions reduction timeline for multifamily. And just highlighting that the ICS does meet the criteria of having a 50% reduction by 2030 and a 0% or 100% reduction by 2050. And that's all I have.
Great. Thank you, Diana. First, if there are any representatives of the application, could you please introduce your name and your role at the organization?
Sure. This is Peter Lewis, Executive Vice President of Property Management for the Shocking Companies, and we manage Roxbury Highlands. Thank you.
And I'm Will Lippincott. I work for RPM. We're an energy consultant, and I helped put together this application.
Great. All right. Welcome, Peter and Will. All right. We'll turn it over now to the board for any questions, and we will start with Board Member Nelson. Board Member Nelson, you're on mute as well.
Sorry, no questions, thanks.
Sounds good. Thank you. Board Member Lattimore.
Thank you. Just wondering, is the property in question a deed restricted property or an affordable housing development?
It is affordable housing.
And does that same owner own any other BERDO eligible properties?
Well, just again, because of the size of the property, some properties have to report and some do not.
Correct.
And so I don't think the other buildings, I'll call it located or part of this property, are meet the size criteria of what needs to be reported.
Correct. So this is one of 3 properties or sites in this property, and this is the only BERDO site of the 3. The other 2 are too small to be eligible for BERDO.
Okay, so this particular property owner owns 3 buildings in Boston, and only one of them is BERDO eligible. Is that correct?
So that the 3 buildings make up the one property spread out on service.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, I see.
clarify.
3 buildings make up the one property. And are there any other? And there are no other BERDO eligible buildings owned by this particular owner in Boston?
Correct at this time.
Got it. Thank you.
Yes.
Oh, sorry. All right, great. Thank you, Board Member Lattimore. In terms of my questions, my standard question, why are you seeking this flexibility measure?
Basically, in order to get where we need to go, so we just replaced the heating and domestic hot water system in 2023 through lean efficiency measures, which we expect to carry this, I'll say, quite the distance for this building. But we still need to be able to look at this as an option as well. Will, let me know if I missed anything.
No, they've also done refrigerators and some weatherization work at the site, 2023 and 2022. And this gets the site through 2025. So it kind of gives the site a little breathing room to kind of come up with a long-term plan 2030, 2035 to see how we're gonna hit these emission standards.
Great, thank you. Are there any other challenges that you envision with compliance with the law?
I mean, it is a old brownstone that has some pretty antiquated controls. So, full net zero emissions is going to take a deep energy retrofit. Really hard to insulate. Electrification is going to be a challenge. Not all of the apartments have heating zones in them. So that's a big priority. So yeah, it's an old brownstone in Roxbury. It's gonna, it'll be interesting, I'll say.
Yes, for sure. I definitely appreciate that. Have you done a cost assessment of the deep energy retrofit at this time?
Not at this time. I think that's planned at some point in the future.
Sounds good. All right, that makes sense. Great. All right. No further questions from me at this time. I will turn to Board Member Ellis.
Thank you, Acting Chair, and thank you, Will and Peter, for being here. My first question for you is, how long has Roxbury Highlands LLC owned this property?
Goodness, I think this is the same owner since I'll call it the beginning of time when this went in as affordable housing. So I don't have the exact year off the top of my head. I can tell you that Shock had started managing this property in 2021.
Okay.
So basically, we have a whole energy sustainability thing items that we do at different properties, and so we started right when we started in 21. As I said, the heating system, domestic hot water, refrigerators, so we're doing all of these things that we can as we go along. And again, hard to say where things go, but again, it's always trying to take, I'll say, advantage of the energy efficiency measures that Lean offers for the affordable properties. And we've been able to do that, and we'll continue to do that here where it makes sense to, like I said, be able to reduce the carbon footprint.
Thank you, Peter. So, for context, one of the reasons I asked how long has the property been owned by the LLC is because knowing that the ICS allows you to take benefit going all the way back to 2005, and the way the tax assessor's record looks, it does look like it's been owned for quite some time. But it does, from your answer, it sounds like your engagement with them started in 2021. I appreciate the highlights of all of the energy efficiency and retrofits that have been put under consideration. However, I am wondering, was any other previous baseline year considered when thinking about your options that were available to you? Meaning, could you have chosen 2010 or any other year? So realistically speaking, I think one of the aspects of my question is really about data availability with respect to the emissions that were produced by this building. So can you talk a little bit about why 2021 was the chosen year for this application?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it was data availability. This is a multifamily site, and electricity is paid by the tenants. So getting whole building aggregate data, historic data is pretty difficult. I believe the utility only goes back 3 years now. So, obviously that's before 2021. So getting historic data was pretty difficult. Off the top of my head, I think we only had 2020 and 2021. And we chose 2021 because it was a little bit higher, but they were almost identical. So yes, to answer your question, data was hard to get.
Okay, thank you. That's what I was looking to see if that was the case. And William, I appreciate that answer. And one comment that I have for the city, and since we are now seeing ICS for the first time, and it's just something to consider, knowing that, especially what William just stated, a lot of data is offered by the utilities usually only go back to 3 years. So in the future, if we're having ICS come before us and the cutoff point is 2021, there is an inherent difficulty that might show up in this case. And so I don't know if the city needs to respond to this right now, but I want to know, I guess my question is that being taken into consideration where access to data for baseline information may be difficult, especially in places like residential units?
I can answer that. It's definitely something that we've discussed, and it's a challenge with individual compliance schedules. And I think we see individual compliance schedules as an option for some buildings, but there will be situations where the data availability just will make that not a real option for some building owners, and they'll likely need to pursue an alternative pathway if they need flexibility. But so that's where we're at with that right now.
Thank you,
But
Hannah. So
there are challenges with it.
okay, so I guess this kind of gets to my question before we started with this application, that in the cases of special conditions, this could be something that might come up in the future as a form of a special condition if data accessibility is not available for a 2001 baseline or even further back.
Sorry, do you mean 2021?
Sorry,
Okay.
2021. Forgive me.
Potentially, I think I would need to look back at the ordinance and the regulations on that. I think because an individual compliance schedule is dependent on historic data, I think that is an essential element of the application. But I think that's something we can look back at the ordinance and regulations to get a clearer picture on.
Okay, if we can do that for future policy development, I would recommend that, especially if a new building owner or a new management company comes in and they simply cannot get that historical data. I don't want to make it a burden or a barrier for them to be able to seek this kind of flexibility opportunity. So, thank you all for your comments and I appreciate it. I have no further questions at this time.
Excellent. All right. Thank you, Board Member Ellis. Councilor Coletta Zapata, any questions?
I apologize. No questions for me. Thank you so much.
Sounds good. Thank you. Board Member Boyd, any questions?
No questions, thank you.
Sounds good. I do want to make a few other questions and points. First, I think that Board Member Ellis raises a really good point, and I think it'd be worth considering, holding a hearing at some point in the future where we can hear from the utilities, among others, about, how we can make sure that access to this historic data can happen, at least in the limited cases where we foresee it happening. Second, I actually wanted to pose an additional question that came up in my mind to our applicants. Are there any utility accounts in this building that are not controlled by tenants, but rather are controlled by you all as the owners?
Yeah, yes. Gas, and there's a house meter, house electric meter.
Great.
So
Okay.
all heating is paid by the,
All heating, you said, is paid by the owner.
Yes.
correct.
All right. Sorry. Yeah, sorry if I cut you off. Okay, good. And have you opted into Boston's community choice electricity, perhaps the Green 100 option, through your owned utility accounts?
I don't, so for ours, we use a broker for our third-party supplier contracts. I couldn't tell you which one this has at the moment, but I don't believe that we're in the city of Boston's.
Got it. Got it. Do you know if you're procuring any renewable energy through that third-party supplier?
Off the top of my head, no.
Got it. No, you don't know, or no?
Yeah, no, I don't know. I'm sorry. Yeah, just to
Got it.
clarify, no, I don't know off the top of my head without going, I'll call it, do a deep dive into a file to find some information.
Sure. Yeah, no, I totally understand that. Thank you. And then do you know if any of your tenants' utility accounts are using community choice electricity?
Without getting their bill, we would have really no way of knowing.
Totally. Yeah, no, recognizing that, yeah, I didn't know if you had, they'd mentioned it to me.
Listen, if we had that information, that would make it helpful as far as energy.
Oh, I know. I think we all would wish that we would have that information. Yeah.
Trying to get that information from the utility company alone is a battle. And we just want consumption. I mean, all I'm looking for is consumption data, and that is difficult to get a hold of.
Oh, I know. I feel the challenge here, definitely. So appreciate that you've at least thought this through. Okay, good. Well, I think that certainly the community choice electricity, any of the options, but definitely Green 100 are really good initial first steps to help further the renewable energy component of this of the emissions standard compliance. So I would highly recommend that. And I do want to ask now if there are any other questions from any of the other board members. Board Member Lattimore.
Not so much a question, but I want to, thank you for putting out those those suggestions about community choice. And I think especially for an affordable housing development to, even if it's hard to get for the building owner to get their hands on the utility data when it's individualized by the tenants, to ensure the tenants are aware of, and the city has lots of information, and other agencies like BCAN and Atmosphere in DC are very much in the business of making sure low and moderate income people know about community choice electric. And so I appreciate your comment, interim chair, and think that it's really important that affordable housing development get the word out to their tenants about community choice electric. So I applaud that recommendation and would ask for Shawkett to consider making sure the tenants understand they have access to that program.
Yes, and we can actually put that information out to the property again to just make sure that the tenants are aware of it.
Right. And there are many outlets to get you information to inform yourselves about and the tenants. And thank you. That's it. That's all.
Great. Thank you, Board Member Lattimore. Any other questions or comments from any of the board members? Board Member Ellis.
Just a question, or more so, maybe it's for Hannah specifically, because this might be a little bit of a higher situation here. Is there any pull or any power that the city has in terms of asking the utilities to maintain, say, a 2021 historical record? Like, and if that's too much of a larger question right now, we can table it for now. But it's just a curiosity of mine. Like, what pull does the city have to have a utility company maintain, say, 2021 records?
That is a good question. It is something we have been talking to the utilities about. I know a lot of it, some of the issues stem from how they maintain their data records and their billing systems. Yeah, so I don't have a response to kind of what we can do on that. It's something we've talked about and can certainly follow up on it as well.
Okay. Thank you, Hannah.
Great. Good question. Any other questions or comments? Okay. Is there a motion to request a hearing on this application? Okay. Seeing none, is there a motion to approve the application with standard conditions?
Motion to approve Roxbury Highlands application with standard conditions.
Is there a second?
Second.
There's a second. All right, we will vote now on the motion to approve Roxbury Highlands application for an individual compliance schedule with standard conditions. We'll start the roll call vote with Board Member Boyd.
In favor.
Councilor Coletta Zapata.
In favor.
Board Member Ellis.
In favor.
I am in favor. Board Member Lattimore.
In favor.
And Board Member Nelson.
In favor.
All right. Thank you, everyone. The ayes have it. The motion passes, and Roxbury Highlands application is approved with standard conditions. And per the regulations, the Environment Department will send a copy of the written decision letter within 7 days. All right. Thank you so much. And Peter and Will, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
All right. We can move on now to our next application for an individual compliance schedule, and this is from the Mass Bay Brewing Company. I'll turn it first to Diana to present the application.
Yes, thank you, Acting Chair, and thank you, Review Board, for all of your thoughtful questions around individual compliance schedules. So the next application is from Mass Bay Brewing Company. So a quick summary of their application. They selected a baseline year of 2019. They have one building located in the neighborhood of South Boston waterfront, and the application did meet all of the eligibility criteria, and we did deem it complete. So the owner is Mass Bay Brewing Company Incorporated. Their building use type is manufacturing industrial. It's for one building located at 306 R Northern Ave, Boston. For context, I think most people know that it's Harpoon Brewery, so it's a brewery. And their default reduction schedule is on the top row here, and their proposed alternative individual compliance schedule is here on the bottom row. And similarly, we have a bar chart that helps sort of visualize the comparison. So the blue bars are the proposed ICS reduction. The orange bars are the default emissions reductions for this building as a manufacturing industrial building. And just highlighting that the ICS does have a 50% reduction from baseline year to 2030 by 2030 and 100% reduction by 2050. So that is my quick summary of the applications.
Excellent. All right. Thank you, Diana. Are there any representatives of the application here? If so, can you introduce yourself and your role?
Yes, hi, I'm John Beery with Mass Bay Brewing.
Great. Welcome. Thank you, John. And now I'll turn it to our board members for Q&A. We'll start with Board Member Boyd.
No questions, thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Coletta Zapata. Councilor, do you have any questions? And if you were speaking just now, you're on mute. Okay, we'll circle back. Board Member Ellis.
Yes, thank you. And thank you, John, for joining us today. So first, I'm just going to start with the assessing records. If you can tell me quickly, what is the relationship between the economic development and industrial, I'm forgetting the last part, and Mass Bay Brewing Company?
Yeah, absolutely. So we are on a long-term lease out in the Seaport. So I believe it's a 50-year lease with the Economic Development Council. So long-term lease, manufacturing here in downtown Boston, making brewing beer. So that's the relation there.
Got it. Okay, thank you. I was wondering. I was like, well, am I reading the wrong thing? But that makes sense. All right.
For sure. And we signed the transfer of responsibility over as well. So we followed all those steps and done the assessment with RPM. So everything's filed in that regard too.
Understood. And my next question for you is similar to the previous ICS. Why, in your case, why 2019 as your historical record? Because I get the sense that this property has been in existence for quite some time. Harpoon's been around for a minute now, so.
No, absolutely. It's a really good question. So the reason we've chosen 2019, it reflects our normal production volume. So 2020 was a down year for us. So 2019 reflects when we're humming. This is our normal volume that we're producing and our normal energy usage. So that's why we picked 2019.
Okay, so further years back, like 2018, 2017, are still in alignment with the 2019 values, is what you're saying,
Yes,
correct?
exactly.
Okay, not a problem. Now, one thing that I honestly was looking for in the application, and it wasn't there, was your narrative of some significant emission reduction efforts that have been taken. So has any effort been taken at all? Or, I do see what you have written here in terms of looking to the future, looking into electrical improvement for lighting and refrigeration. But I'm just curious, have there been any steps taken prior to the submission of this application?
Absolutely. So the big challenge with brewing is it's an extremely energy intensive process. You're rapidly heating large volumes of liquid, and then you're rapidly cooling those volumes of liquid as well. So you have a massive usage of energy kind of going in both directions. So it's in not only our economic best interest, but we believe in from an environmental perspective of doing the right thing. So we've invested in a lot of cutting edge technology around recapture, where we use heat exchangers. So when we're heating, when we heat and cool, we're taking that differential and applying it to the next aspect in our manufacturing. So we've invested in this for years, part of the challenge with brewing is it's just an inherently very energy rich process because you're dealing with thousands of gallons of liquid and heating and cooling it. And that's just inherent to brewing beer. But we've invested in the process, and we're always looking at any technological advancements we can make. We've invested in it.
Okay, thank you, John. My not a question, but last comment, it's interesting because, when I was looking over the things that you were looking into in terms of electrical improvement, lighting, refrigerations, and seeing if you can use less natural gas, it made me curious about what opportunities are you exploring with respect to renewable energy for brewing. If you have a comment, please feel free to share, but I don't have a direct question on that right now. So I'll pause, and then that's the end of my time.
Got it.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Thank you, Board Member Ellis. You answered already one of my first questions. My second one is, are there any challenges that you envision with BERDO compliance beyond the, kind of endemic challenge you articulated given the use of the building?
Not in the immediate term. As I said, we're always investing in ways to reduce energy consumption, and it might have to come through where we're purchasing our energy sources, but we just hit that recurring challenge of we're heating and cooling thousands and thousands of gallons of liquid. But that being said, where we purchase our energy and going green in that regard, as well as any technology coming in the pipeline where we can recapture heat. But we've invested in a lot of it already. And we are studying the industry constantly to see how we can be more efficient.
Great. Yeah. On that point about purchasing energy, and apologies if I missed this already, are you all opted into the Community Choice Electricity Program?
I am not 100% sure on that, and I can get back to you on that question.
Got it. Great. Thank you. And then I think that concludes my questions for now. I'll turn it to Board Member Lattimore.
Thank you. And question about just a follow up on the renewable energy and what the other industry trade folks are doing. Are you aware of any innovations that some of your peer breweries are doing in terms of energy efficiency and reducing emissions? And if so, just curious if you are.
No, absolutely. We are, and that's the heat exchanger system that we've installed was the big step forward in that regard. So we've been studying it for years, and we've already jumped on one of the big avenues of reducing that energy consumption.
Mm-hmm. And is that heat exchanger a renewable source?
It is. It's using the input. There's one input of heat, and then we're using the heat exchanger to heat and cool.
Right. Okay. Thank you. No more questions.
Great. Thank you, Board Member Lattimore. Board Member Nelson.
Thank you. So I'm just wondering, have you developed or had a consultant develop a decarbonization plan so that you at least have a path to follow moving forward? Or is that still something that needs to be finalized?
Admittedly, I am new to the company, so I have not. I'm sure they have, but that's something that I can get back to you on for the decarbonization plan. I know we've engaged RPM to do our analysis, but I can get back on that question as well.
Okay. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Any other questions or comments from any other board members? Board Member Ellis.
Thank you. I am chatting a lot today. I don't know what's come over me, but John, given Board Member Nelson's question, I respect that we've submitted this ICS and you have this pathway laid out before you about where your emissions are intended to be based on those 5-year increments. But if you are, I guess one of the curiosity is like, are you confident that or are comfortable with these emission standards, especially without having a decarbonization plan? And more so, it's one of those cases where, you know, if we get to 2025 and you find that your emissions are way higher than what is set here, that can be to as a detriment to your organization. So I mean, I guess I'm not necessarily trying to go into a hearing. That's not where I want to go, but I do want to exercise some caution here that if there's no decarbonization plan that has been laid out, how confident is your organization about being able to meet the targets that are listed here?
It's a good question. So again, I'm new being employed here. So in terms of the decarbonization plan, I just haven't discussed it specifically, but we are always looking at our energy efficiency. So that's something that I would love to follow up with my superior and ask what our specific plan is, and we can get back to you on that.
Okay. And please feel free to reach out to us if you need to update your flexibility measures if you're finding that the decarbonization plan is not going to align well with this individual compliance schedule. So thank you.
Absolutely. No, in the discussions I have heard, we're optimistic about it. But I just want to get more detail. I don't want to say
Okay.
anything I don't know.
Sounds great. I just wanted to hear a little sense of optimism here, but and I appreciate to hear that. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you, Board Member Ellis. Any other questions or comments from board members? Okay. Any others? Okay. Given my question, I'll just pose to my fellow board members, and predominantly to Board Member Ellis, but also to everyone else. You know, given the question that Board Member Ellis just posed, as well as the question about opting into community choice electricity, do we feel that it's appropriate to table the application until we hear more information from the applicant, or do we feel comfortable voting on this at this time?
Interim Chair, I think that those are good points. There are a number of questions about kind of the path forward for the building owner or the tenant in this case. And so I don't know if the review board has the authority to table or request a hearing. If we could table and pending the additional information or more clarity from per the questions asked, then I would say yes, table. But otherwise, I would suggest holding a hearing if that's the only other pathway.
That's great. Thank you. Question to staff is that do you have an opinion on the on Board Member Lattimore's question about the ability to table the application, or if it's appropriate for us to move into a hearing?
That's a good question.
I'm looking at the regulations. Diana, I don't know if you are doing the same thing.
Yeah, I'm doing a little bit of research.
This is the first individual compliance schedule meeting we've had. So thanks to everyone for bearing with us while we learn.
Of course, of course. Oh yeah, Board Member Ellis, were you going to chime in?
Yeah, since that question was largely directed because of my comments here, my stance on this right now is given that, 2025 is approaching, granted we still have some time. I would not want to burden the building owner with holding off to come up with a decarbonization plan because they are time consuming and they take a while to put together. So if they are confident that they are at least going to be able to be within the threshold of the 2025 target, I think it's fine to approve the application. Granted, they may need to think about what they may look like in the next threshold, which is 2030. But nevertheless, we were trying to do due diligence for them, but they also have to do their own due diligence as well. And so I know I am fine with essentially tabling or even approving, but I don't know if I would want tabling. Let me be clear, tabling so that the city can answer the question about how one should move forward with this, and tabling to the next meeting to approve. But I am also fine with approving as is so that we do not subject them to waiting until they get a decarbonization plan in front of them. So I hope what I'm saying makes sense.
If I might jump in with, so a decarbonization plan is not a requirement of an individual compliance schedule application, so I don't think that is appropriate to ask them to complete that prior to reviewing and voting on an individual compliance schedule. And the rules say that within 90 days of the Environment Department's finding of completeness, which Diana could give us the date of that, the review board shall vote on the application. So that's the requirement that we have in the rules.
Sounds great. And thank you. And
So-
oh, sorry. Go ahead, Board Member Lattimore.
Well, I think there were more questions than just whether or not to do a decarbonization plan. There were other questions as well, so it didn't necessarily just hinge on that. So it sounds like we either approve, disapprove, or call for a public hearing. Is that my understanding, Hannah and Diana?
I would think that your options for voting, and Diana and Claudia come in with a second opinion if you disagree, would be to approve, deny, or continue to a next hearing. Or sorry, to the next meeting, but not a public hearing. The distinction being the public comment period or Q&A session.
Yeah. I would suggest we continue to the next hearing, because there were more than just questions related to whether or not there was a need to develop a decarbonization plan. There were other questions as well that needed clarity, in my opinion.
Excellent. Thank you. Just a brief question on Hannah's point. Diana, do you know the date at which the city found this application to be complete?
Yes, the city found this application complete on September 27th. So just about, or October 28th. So we're just hitting 29 days, I believe, but I can double check.
Great. All right. That's helpful. Thank you. Board Member Ellis.
Yes, thank you. And thank you, Board Member Lattimore, for your statement about other questions. So forgive me. If it's possible, can we please clarify, like, what are the additional questions that we would like, Mass Bay Brewing Company to answer? Because if we're going to postpone, then I want to make sure that we're doing due diligence of asking the appropriate questions.
I think there was a question about whether or not they were pursuing city Boston Electric. There was also a question, I think, that you had, and I didn't ask because you kind of asked it before I got my questions related to, what renewable energy and other methods that they were applying, trying to apply to meet the standards. So it doesn't necessarily call for a decarbonization plan, but for me, it would be interesting to hear a little bit more about their plans and methods.
Thank you, Board Member Lattimore. Okay. I have no further questions.
Excellent. Yes, Hannah.
If I may just interject with like a point of information on the Boston Community Choice Electricity, it sounds like the board is asking for more information on the Mass Bay Brewing's renewable energy purchasing in general. So I think we can definitely follow up with them on that. But just I want to just add a point of clarification on BCCE in general. While it is a really great product for smaller energy consumers, residents, small businesses, it's often not the cheapest option for electricity purchasing or renewable energy purchasing for larger electricity consumers. So I don't know what Mass Bay Brewing's plans are, but I wouldn't be surprised if that actually is not the cheapest option for them. So just wanted to point that out to everyone as well.
to add on to Hannah's comment there, that is, I know, so as I said, I'm new here. We are constantly, our energy input is a major line item for us. It's a huge part of our business. Like, it's the biggest challenge of our business. And we're constantly evaluating vendors for how we can get the cheapest, most efficient energy. So we are, I'm going to look into if we have researched the community choice electric specifically, as well as just the broader question of how we're sourcing our energy, just to get you guys a better answer. But I know we're evaluating it constantly because it's a huge factor for us.
Great, thank you. I appreciate that point. And I also wanted to state for the record Claudia's point in the chat, which was that for reference, accounts that use more than 1.5 million kilowatt hours per year are not eligible for BCCE, which was a helpful reminder for me. Just a point of information, and this may be on a previous slide, does this property fall into that category of more than 1.5 million kilowatt hours per year?
I would have to get back to you on that specific, but based on the graphic that was shown earlier, I believe we are.
Okay. All right, great. That's very helpful. Any other points or questions or comments from board members or staff?
None at this time, but happy to answer more clarifying questions if you have.
Great, thank you. Excellent. Okay, seeing no other questions, I know that there had been some interest in a motion to continue the application. Just as a point of clarification, if we vote on a motion to continue and the motion fails, can we still move to approve with standard conditions within this meeting, or would we have to then proceed with that in the subsequent meeting?
If there was a motion to continue and it did not pass, the board can make another motion, and which could be a motion to approve with standard conditions.
Okay, great. All right, wonderful.
It would just have to be seconded and follow the same procedure.
Sure. Yeah, sounds good. Okay, great. Is there a motion to continue the application?
So moved.
Are there any seconds?
Second.
Sounds good. We will vote on a motion to continue the application of Mass Bay Brewing Company, and this is an application for an individual compliance schedule. We will vote in this order. Board Member Boyd, we'll start with you.
Favor.
Councilor Coletta Zapata.
Yes.
Board Member Ellis.
In favor.
I vote in favor. Board Member Lattimore.
In favor.
And Board Member Nelson.
In favor, but I'm wondering what we're asking the applicant to come back with for further information.
This is a good point. So at this time, the ayes have it, and the application, or the vote to continue the application of Mass Bay Brewing Company for an individual compliance schedule is approved. And then I would also like to, and I believe we can coordinate communication with the applicant about any additional information that we would like to see. I think the key question that I did hear was around renewable energy purchasing and what plans may already be underway for that, as well as any decarbonization assessment or planning that has already taken place that the representative of the application is not aware of. I think that probably we can follow up with the applicant offline with any additional questions or comments that we'd like to share with them, unless anyone would like to interject right now.
Hi, I can summarize. It sounds like the motion was to continue the application for Mass Bay Brewing with hoping to ask questions regarding any plans to pursue or have a general understanding of a decarbonization plan that's in place currently, and or have more information regarding any sort of renewable energy strategy. So the Environment Department can follow up with the applicant offline and schedule the application for a following meeting with the applicant, having some more information regarding those items.
Perfect.
Excellent.
And John, would you be the right person? Just sorry for the little transparent facilitation.
Yeah, Diane, so
You're the
I
right
just
person.
replaced Matt Feuerbach. I'm not sure if you communicated with him previously. So I just replaced him recently. So I am the person to get in touch with.
Great, awesome. If you don't mind sending your email to the BERDO review board at boston.gov, or I can reach out. I believe our contact was Christina, so maybe she'd be able to help us.
Yes, Christina. Yeah, so Christina's on the call as well. So if you email her, she can
great.
forward that, and then we can just roll it from there.
Okay,
yeah.
perfect.
Awesome.
Great.
All right, thank you all. Appreciate your time.
Absolutely. Thank you. We appreciate your time, John, and appreciate you getting us more information. All right, thanks everyone for that. We can move on to the next item on the agenda, which is an application for an individual compliance schedule from the community builders. To present the application, I'll turn it over to you, Diana.
Great. Thank you so much, Chair. Our last individual compliance schedule application is from the community builders. So they've selected a baseline year of 2019. It's for one building located in the neighborhood of Jamaica Plain. Seems like they're on the border of Jamaica Plain and Roxbury, so depending, two neighborhoods. And the application meets all of the eligibility criteria, and the application was deemed complete. Oops. So the owner, as I mentioned, is the community builders. It's for a multifamily housing building. They are an affordable housing developer. It's for one building located at 125 Amory Avenue in Boston. So again, the top row is the default emissions reduction schedule for multifamily housing within BERDO, and the bottom row is the proposed individual compliance schedule. And similarly, we have a chart to help sort of visualize what that looks like in comparison. So the blue bars are the proposed individual compliance schedule. The orange bars are the default reduction schedule within BERDO for multifamily housing. It's the standard times the gross floor area for this building. And highlighting again that this ICS does meet the 50% reduction from baseline by 2030. And that's it for my summary.
Excellent. Thank you, Diana. Before we move into Q&A, are there any representatives of the application? And if so, could you please introduce yourself for the record?
Hi, I'm Michael Hibson with the Community Builders.
And hi, Will Lippincott, also here from RPM. I also helped put together this application.
Excellent. All right. Welcome, Michael. Welcome back, Will. We'll move into now Q&A from our board members, and we will begin with board member Nelson.
No questions. Thanks.
Thank you. Board member Lattimore.
Thank you. Yes. Just curious of, this is an affordable housing development, correct?
Yep.
Okay. And I know the community builders is pretty big. Are there any other BERDO eligible buildings in Boston, your portfolio?
Yes, I think there are about 15. So the rest, I'll say the majority of them are it's currently in process for building portfolio flexibility. There were 3 sites that had different ownership, so they couldn't be put in. But outside of those 3, the remaining BERDO sites are going to be in a building portfolio application that you guys will hopefully be hearing at the next meeting. We're just finalizing the application now.
Thank you. No more questions.
Excellent. Thank you. Board member Ellis.
Chair, I'm going to have to ask you to come back to me. I need to move locations.
No worries. Councilor Coletta Zapata.
No question. Thank you so much.
Board member Boyd.
No questions. Thank you.
Thank you. My questions for the applicants are as follows. First, can you describe how the utility accounts are structured? Is the owner paying all the utilities or tenants paying utilities? Is it a mix of both?
Michael,
You want to
I'll
take that,
refer to
Will?
you there. Yeah, actually,
Don't
I
know that one.
believe you guys are paying all of them. Is that correct?
So we are paying for all of the heat and water and sewer. Tenants may have their own plug loads. Might be a fully master metered building. I could confirm that. It's probably a fully master metered building. So yeah, we bear but the largest part of that cost is heating. It's a fully electric building. We converted it from electric resistance to heat pumps in 2021.
Okay, excellent. All right, that answers another question. Thank you. That's good to hear. And in terms of renewable energy procurement to the building, are you opted into community choice electricity, procuring renewable energy certificates, anything of that sort?
I think to the point of was it Hannah's point earlier? For a large building like this, where we're paying the full cost of heating, it's actually more expensive to opt in. And as it's such a large cost driver, that's an issue for the project's finances. What we're doing right now is we've had a power purchase agreement set up where a third party installed solar on the roof, and it's about to begin operations. So that's how we're looking to decrease our electricity expenditure. I also believe that we're locked into a bulk energy purchase agreement until 2026. Again, that would be to save when we sign up for it, the primary motivation would have been to save cost rather than to get to 100% clean at this point.
Mhm. Sure, yeah, no, I understand that. No, I appreciate that you're doing those things. Any other points that you want to add about why you're seeking this flexibility measure beyond what we've already discussed and heard from?
Well, you could speak better to how this is
Sure.
beneficial for the property. Yeah.
So the site did a deep energy retrofit, like Michael was saying in 2021. They didn't just do heat pumps, which is a full VRF system, pretty major project. They also did a ton of weatherization work. They did new windows. They installed a new efficient domestic hot water system, complete overhaul of the property. So there are still, if you look at the portfolio manager, it has a pretty low Energy Star score. We think there's some controls issues, possibly some malfunctioning with the VRF system. So a big reason we wanted to look at an ICS here was to give us the flexibility in 2025 to kind of tackle why there is still such high energy use despite this deep energy retrofit. So this gets the site through 2025 to kind of come up with a plan for 2030.
To kind of piggyback on that, this is also part of a phased development project in partnership with the Boston Housing Authority. This was the first phase, and there are actually other buildings that are currently metered to our building. So just to get to the one of the questions asked earlier of how are we confident if we've done all the work already that we're actually going to hit the reductions? Well, we're confident that in the next 5 years we will have one of the buildings will have their own meter, and the other building will be demolished as part of the phased development plan, so it won't be attached to our building any longer.
So yeah, just to clarify, those are sites on a different parcel, so not part of this BERDO site, but they share so the site has been reporting additional data for however long it's been reporting BERDO data, which is going to change soon. So that should help a lot.
I see. Okay, great. Well, that's very helpful to know. And then my final question, are there any additional challenges that you envision with compliance?
I don't think
I mean,
so.
or go ahead.
Yeah.
Sorry.
You can go ahead if you've got an answer.
I was just gonna say, I think multifamily in general just poses its own sets of challenges. Their tenant plug load is, always gonna be there, and we can suggest community solar to the tenants, but there's no real way to force them to do that. Additionally, this is an affordable site, so if the tenants are paying their own electricity, or you wouldn't want to incur them additional cost. I do think there's ethical things there. So, yeah, multifamily is hard with plug load, I guess is my answer.
Yeah, I think the other big potential obstacle is just future cost differential between purchasing fully clean electricity and purchasing the cheapest electricity. It's a highly regulated building. You know, we don't have any problems in the next 5 years, but maybe in 2040 we're going to look at things and say, you know what, we actually can't afford the step up in cost to get to clean. So we would have, at that point, I could imagine coming back for a hardship application, but I also think it's unlikely. I think if all of our partners are doing their job to make the grid clean and affordable, then we're on that trajectory to zero with this project because there's no on-site fossil fuels.
Right, right. Great. All right, that's very helpful. I appreciate all the work that you all have done thus far on the retrofit side. So no further questions from me. I'll circle back to you now, Board Member Ellis.
Thank you, Acting Chair. I have two quick questions. First one for Michael or William. Was the parking lot that was demoed from the location, was that an enclosed parking lot?
Do you know the answer to that? Because I do not.
What parking lot? What is that in the application?
That's correct. In your application, it states that a demolition of a parking lot took place, excuse me. And I can give you the rationale for why I'm asking the question. I wanted to know if you baseline emissions that were submitted, does that include any potential energy that was being sent into the parking lot, or is that excluded?
Yeah. So one, I'm not familiar with the site, with the project, the original project plan in that much detail, but I don't believe that there was a covered parking lot. And William, what was our baseline year?
We ended up doing 2019.
2019. Okay, so that would have been during construction. Yeah, but I don't believe that there would have been an enclosed parking structure on the property. There are items there there's one additional structure to be demolished, but I don't believe that there was it certainly wasn't a large sophisticated parking structure. It wouldn't have been one that if there was a parking structure, it wouldn't have required a huge energy usage like ventilation or anything. It wouldn't have been a modern one by any means.
Or heated, I don't think. There might have been some electricity, would be my only guess, but
yeah,
it
it would have been
before both
lighting
of our
at
time.
most. Yeah, it would have been lighting at most. Sure, like this wasn't that sophisticated of a property.
Okay. I hear that, and apologies for any noise in the background. It was just one of those things of just trying to confirm that those baseline emissions are not taking into account an aspect of the structure which no longer exists. And if it wasn't heated, what I'm also hearing, you're unsure if it was or was unheated. So I fear that I might be causing another, can you please answer that question before approving this?
I mean, I have, you know, big picture, like rehab descriptions in front of me, and none of them include anything about demolishing a significant amount of parking. I think it would have just been some small amount of surface lot, and the warehouse on site is still there. Yeah.
Okay. Diana, I just making sure that I'm reading this up, documentation that was submitted, and it has a demo certificate that was submitted along with the application. And so I feel like I'm just want to make sure we're doing our due diligence with respects to the baseline emissions that are influencing the overall ICS. So Diana, I just want to quickly ask, like, is that an appropriate demo certificate? And if so, I may make a motion in a second.
Yes, thanks for the question, Board Member Ellis. Yes, so as some context, I suppose, in the application, there was a demo buildings plan certificate that was submitted, and it seems that the demolition was for an abandoned garage building. Excuse me, sorry, I'm losing my voice. For an abandoned garage building at 125 Emery Street. Just, I guess, some context, it says that the cubic feet was 22,500. It was first one-story first floor built parking garage. Yeah, sorry, to repeat your question, Board Member Ellis, are you asking if the demolition if the certificate is appropriate for more questions? Sorry, I missed the question.
Well, no, I was more so making sure like that was an appropriate demolition certificate, and that it was intended to be a part of this application as it relates to the property itself. And so I am sitting here just wanting to make sure that we get a confirmation about the baseline overall, and if that can be clarified. I absolutely agree. There may not have been a large significant energy usage, or on top of that, if it was abandoned, it most likely had almost negligible energy usage. But because I'm not hearing a direct answer to that question, I'm starting to wonder if this is one of those moments where we just do a motion to get that question answered to ensure that the baseline is in fact correct.
So
I see.
The reason we submitted the demolition is because there's a slight change in square footage from 2019 to 2024, because of this, single story small parking lot. So that was included to show the discrepancy between square footage, which I think was 1 or 2%. It was a very small portion of the entire overall property.
Okay, thank you. I when I'm looking at the application, I'm seeing closer to 4%, but again, that's still negligible.
Misremembered. Yeah.
Okay.
And just if I might jump into the point of clarification, in the regulations, it's 10% that we look at for changes, a decrease in square footage of greater than 10% is part of the eligibility criteria for an ICS. So this is under that.
Okay, thank you, Hannah. That's helpful. I have no further questions at this time, and I will not make a motion.
Excellent. All right. Thank you for the questions, Board Member Ellis. Are there any other questions or comments from any board members? Okay. Seeing none, is there a motion to request a hearing on this application? Okay. Seeing none, is there a motion to approve the application of the community builders individual compliance schedule with standard conditions?
So moved.
Motion to approve.
Excellent. Any seconds on the application? Or on the motion? Thank you. All right. We will conduct a roll call vote on this motion to approve the community builders application with standard conditions. Board Member Boyd.
In favor.
Councilor Coletta Zapata.
In favor.
Board Member Ellis.
In favor.
I am in favor. Board Member Lattimore.
In favor.
And Board Member Nelson.
In favor.
Excellent. All right. The ayes have it, and the motion passes to approve the community builders individual compliance schedule application Per the regulations, the Environment Department will send a copy of the written decision letter within 7 days. Thank you so much, everybody. And Will and Michael, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you all. Take care.
Yeah. All right. Next, we will turn to the approval of the previous meeting's minutes. This was October 15th. Are there any questions or comments regarding the meeting minutes? Okay. Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Great. On the motion to approve the meeting minutes, board members may vote in favor, oppose, or abstain if they did not attend the last meeting. Those in favor of approving the meeting minutes, please say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right. Board members abstained, please say abstained. Okay. I think the motion passes. The meeting minutes are approved, and we will move on to our next agenda item, administrative updates. Turning to Diana, I believe.
Yes, I can provide an update for the administrative updates. So just wanted to give a quick summary of the amount of flexibility measure applications we've received. So in total, we have 20 building portfolio applications. We have received 1 resubmission for an ICS and building portfolio. After the 3 that we heard today, there's still 1 more ICS application. And we have received 4 total for hardship compliance plans, 2 short-term, 2 long-term resubmissions, and the BERDO team is currently reviewing those applications for completeness. So the board may see some hardship applications soon-ish. And some good news, we have heard that a board member has been selected to refill one of the seats on the review board by the mayor's office. So Jessica Boatwright has been selected by the mayor as of today officially. And her nomination will be referred to the city council for Wednesday's city council hearing. So very good news that we're moving forward with the selection. I just wanted to remind the public that the BERDO team also plans to hold a residential tenants meeting on December 9th. So folks may remember in the regulations process, during the regulations, there was a lot of interest in dedicating some time and resources to tenants, specifically related to BERDO. And each year, the review board has to dedicate 1 meeting specifically to residential tenants. So this year, it will be December 9th. Some initial thoughts right now include sharing resources related to BERDO and tenants, BCCE, Mass Save, the city's anti-displacement plans, and those sort of things, and then sort of just give the tenants an opportunity to ask questions from the BERDO team and of course the review board. And we'll start outreaching for that as well. We're currently developing a flyer, which we'll share with the review board, and if the review board has any networks or contacts that they would like to share that with, we would really appreciate that. And then sort of reviewing our timeline here. So November 11th is our next meeting. That is actually Veterans Day. So I wanted to propose to the board that we move that day to November 12th, which is the following Tuesday. And then reminder that November 15th is the extended reporting deadline for folks who requested an extension. And November 25th is another scheduled meeting. And then December 9th is the last meeting of the year. And the meeting that would be dedicated to residential tenants. And then lastly, a reminder that January 6th is the deadline for building portfolio and individual compliance schedule applications. So that was a lot of information, but I just wanted to take a moment, Chair, if you don't mind, hearing from the review board if they would be open to the proposal of moving the meeting from November 11th to November 12th.
Great. Thank you, Diana. Moving the meeting to November 12th works for me, and open it up to other board members.
Works for me.
Okay.
Yeah,
Great. Yes, go ahead.
Sorry about that. I may not be able to join directly at 4:30, so I may come in late. So just an FYI, I can do it, but I may be joining late.
All right. Great. Thank you. I think that given that it makes sense to move the meeting to November 12th. And thank you for the administrative updates. I do want to also open it up if any of the board members have any other questions or comments on any of the administrative updates provided. Board Member Lattimore.
Yes, thanks for the timeline. As in regards, and maybe we covered this in the past, so forgive me, but in regard to the December 9th meeting that tenants are welcome to attend, is there any material kind of information that the city has, put together about kind of, the agenda or the nature of that meeting, so to share with potential tenants?
Yeah, it's a good question. So we're developing it now. We're hoping to have like a short flyer with the agenda on it to sort of give an idea of what will be discussed. We're thinking of it as sort of being a general overall coverage of what BERDO is, what the review board does, how to stay plugged in if you're interested. So you could attend these meetings, for example. You could sign up for the newsletter. And then we were thinking of sharing resources related to BCCE, Mass Save, and the city's anti-displacement plan in general, because we imagine tenants may be interested in that. And then sort of have a Q&A with the board and the city.
Great. Thank you. I would just say, recommend that if with one of the RDH meetings, there's time for us to discuss that meeting. I know there's one coming up soon, I think this week in RDH training. If there's opportunity to just talk about the agenda for the tenant meeting there, that might be helpful. I'm just thinking, the agenda you outlined sounds good. I'm just thinking about the things that tenants might want to know about in terms of, the way the review board wants to kind of understand, and I'm sure this is part of what to go over, but just if the building owner is kind of giving them information about, BERDO, as, and what some of the kind of recommendations or, powers or issues the board might be able to, wield, what kind of things we might put as conditions, that kind of thing. Just information like that to the tenants as well. Just something to talk about. That's all I'm suggesting at our next internal training, if possible. Thank you.
Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you.
Oh,
I can read lips, no problem.
Board Member
I
Ellis,
can
go
read
ahead.
lips. I'm a big lip reader, so that's all right. Thank you, Acting Chair. Just very quickly, I agree with what Board Member Lattimore said, but I believe I might be confusing this upcoming RDH meeting as being the repetitive of the previous ones that have been happening in the past. And I know that there was a conversation about one more RDH meeting and whether that would be in person or private. So the sooner that we can figure that out, I think the better. That's just one thing. If that meeting that is happening this week is not, I'm not mixing that up. That's the first part.
Should I answer that now?
Yes, please.
Okay. Yes. So you folks remember we have the smaller sessions with RDH, sort of like the more informal session. So yes, the one this week is the smaller session. So one on Friday is more one of those smaller sessions. And you're correct, Board Member Ellis, that we still have one sort of larger session with RDH, and we could propose to RDH that this be something that's added to that agenda.
Okay, thank you. For the interest of time here, I just wanted to provide a reminder that something I always request is when we're done with the reporting period or this extended deadline, excuse me, if we can please have Aiden present at the November 25th meeting on the topics of how the overall reporting has gone. That's all for me. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Board Member Ellis. And yes, I second those points. Board Member Lattimore, go ahead.
Oh, yeah, just thank you for all that information and for the questions, Board Member Ellis. I just want to clarify the RDH meeting. I knew there was one more. Is it, and I've been thinking about different topics because I know that was what they were interested in us giving them feedback on. What would you want to have in the last meeting? At least that's what I understood they were asking, or the city was asking us. And so this meeting that's happening this week is a repeat of the last RDH training. Is that the case? Just want to clarify.
Yeah, so the smaller session, yeah, this week is a smaller session. So as a board member, you really only have to attend one of the smaller sessions, or like series of those. Obviously, board members are always welcome to attend more than one if they would like. But these are like more agenda free, as so to say. It's more of like an open office forum style. So you only need to, so it may not be exactly a repetition. It really more depends on what questions are brought up by review board members. But it's sort of like one in a series where review board members only
Okay,
have
so
to
it's open.
go to
It's
one.
kind of what I thought, that open for ideas of what board members want to know about. Is that the case then? And
Yeah.
so would it be appropriate to have discussion about the tenant meeting at this meeting, or is that the right venue for it?
I would say it's appropriate if there are questions, but if it's something that wants to be it's like something that the reviewer would like to discuss with the full board, we could make it an agenda item at the November 12th meeting, and make it an official like review board discussion of building out that agenda.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I would just say, if possible, keeping the RDH topics to like their technical expertise. Their expertise is not on like tenant engagement, so it might be a better use of time to have it with this board or talking to Diana offline about your ideas.
No, I thank you for that. And I know they're technical in nature, but I also know that we have a lot. I just heard about a slew of applications coming up. And so I don't know if we, I have no idea if we have time to discuss these kind of things at the next board meeting without having a 3+ hour meeting. So it's trying to find a space and time for discussion, but I've already made my comments about the tenant meeting. I'll try to send an email about it as well. Thank you.
Sounds good. Yes, thank you, Board Member Lattimore. This was also on my mind, so I think that would be a good, course of action if we can just share our thoughts with Diana over email, and then I do think it may be good to check back in on this just to see the sum total of all of our thoughts, but hopefully we can save meeting time for the litany of applications we'll consider. So great, sounds good.
So sorry, Acting Chair, if I may, I'm just going to repeat what I think I've heard. So if board members have thoughts on agendas for the tenant meeting, please send them to me. And then Ziggy, at the November 12th meeting, we can do a summary of what we're planning for the December 9th meeting, just so that the board can see it all together and add any thoughts or questions. Great.
Yes, that sounds great to me. Thank you for summarizing that. Great. Any other questions or comments on the administrative updates? Okay. Is there a motion to adjourn the meeting?
So moved.
Is there a second? All right. On the motion to adjourn, please say aye if you are in favor. Aye.
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 All right. The ayes have it. The motion passes. The meeting is adjourned at 6:22 p.m. Thank you so much, everybody. Have a good night.
Be safe.